Welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden, your host. This is a bonus edition. This is the time of year to start getting ready for all the things that could, will, or might go wrong next season, including taking care of your dog's eyes. Yes, today on the Upland Nation bonus podcast, the eyes have it. This is one of the many times I've learned by hard-earned experience, and I will share with you some of the things that I do to keep my dog's eyes healthy, and thus he is happy and ready to hunt again the next day. This bonus edition of the Upland Nation podcast is brought to you by PointerShotguns.com, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School at MidvalleyClays.com, TrulockChokes Tubes at TrulockChokes.com, MidwayUSA.com, and Purina Pro Plan Sport. Find them at ProPlanSport.com. Yeah, I know, it's barely spring. So get ready for the season now. Some of these things I'm going to talk about today are you're going to need to train for them. At least get your dogs a little bit more used to your poking and prodding around his eyes. That does take some getting used to. So now is a good time to start working on that. And it all started at this kennel with my first hunting dog. Old Bill, great guy, taught me to hunt in many ways. But he had a condition called ectropion. It's one of the many problems a dog can have with his eyelids. In this case, his lower eyelids sagged. They were not very toned up. So there's a big gap between his eyelid and his eyeball. And he'd run through a field and collect every seed, gravel, leaf, stick, and bug that he ran past. Plus, it was painful even when that wasn't happening because it just exposed too much eyeball and too much third eyelid to air as much as anything else. So I got pretty good at doing an eye check and a lid dump frequently in the field. No, I'm just lucky he was forgiving about all of this because I didn't know what I was doing, and I've learned a lot since, and hopefully so will you. But I erred on the side of caution as a physician would say, do no harm. And I trusted in my veterinarians a lot when I was afraid of doing harm. Anyway, that's why I'm writing this, so you don't have to do anything stupid. And your dog will lead a happy, healthy life working with you in the field. I bring this all up because besides his nose, a dog's eyes are his most important sensory organ in the field. Literally. They keep him from running off a cliff, helping him mark the shot birds as they fall. If you shoot better than me, that is. And they help him find you when you call him back. So please take a moment to remember that taking care of your dog's eyes ensures you'll have a good hunt that day and for the rest of his career. All right. Let me start with a little story. I was on what I thought would become the one and only South Dakota pheasant hunt I was ever going to do. And this is way back before I was making TV. And there I was for the first time with old Bill, digging, gouging, pulling, poking around in his eye. He was better than most dogs, I think, with that. I was probably as nervous as he was. But if you've ever done something like that for the first time, it's way worse than bath time. It's a rodeo, and you better be ready. Yeah, what would you do if a cotton swab was going straight for your eyeball? Yeah, it's a nerve-wracking situation, no doubt about it. But if you left that eye problem to fester, that might be literal at the end of the day, you're just dumb, and your dog is in real danger. a scratched cornea, some sort of ulcerous lesion, an infection. Yeah. The problem we find is that it's not as easy as you reclining in one of those cushy chairs at the optometrist's office while they chat you up under a local anesthetic. It's way different. Your poor dog is going to be stressed out a lot more. So, just like shooting straight or training with him for obedience or field skills, if you both practice in advance, it will pay off. Sometimes it's a little subtle. Sometimes it's very obvious, but how do you know if your dog's eyes need attention? Well, the easy answer is they do. You get down there at dog level and crawl through a field for a while, all that stuff slapping against your face. Yeah, there will be something in there. And if it's not in there, it's because it's stuck to the stalk and scratched and stayed on the stalk. So at the least, check at the end of every day in the field, whether you're hunting or training. If you can do that more often, all the better. If he's pawing at his face, rubbing his face on the ground, or shaking his head, it's time to call him in and do a quick field inspection. If you're looking at him as you're driving down the road, his head's in your lap, of course it is. Look what he did for you that day. Yeah, his head's in your lap. Take a careful look at his eyes. Are they watering? Is there anything oozing from them? Are they red, bleeding? Is there any swelling or a lump? Seen it all? But you gotta make the time to do it. So please do. Now, if you're carrying some of the basic stuff, and I'll give you that list, most of the time in the field or pulling off to the side of the highway, it'll take but a few minutes and then it's off after birds again or all the way home where he can rest in a warm, dry crate after a job well done. I'm Scott Linden. This is a bonus edition of the Upland Nation podcast. We're talking eyes here for a bunch of reasons. As I mentioned earlier with a medical physician, the number one rule is do no harm. And here's why I bring that up. Eyes are, well, they're tougher than you think, but they are also more sensitive than you think, depending on what part of the eye you're working on. And frankly, every problem in an eye can get to the more sensitive spots. So here's some caveats. Number one, if you can't figure it out, or if you're at all uncomfortable going further, if your dog is squirming, nipping, growling, you may just hurt his eye more. So get to a veterinarian and let them handle it. They've got techniques, tactics, strategies, even a little trick here and there that will keep your dog a little bit more calm, and then they can get to the bottom of the problem. Number two, there's lots of ointments out there, lots of eye drops out there, but unless you're absolutely sure there's no damage to your dog's cornea, don't put in an ointment or a drop that has any kind of a steroid. It aggravates the condition. It'll slow healing. And I'm told it really, really hurts. So, finally, if you suspect something's under the dog's third eyelid, I think they call it the nictitating membrane, you know, the one on the bottom, and you can usually tell. You can pull the eyelid down a little, the outside, the outer eyelid, you can pull it down a little bit and see. You'll see a lump or you'll see inflammation or whatever. Let the veterinarian handle that. There's just way too many things that could go sideways on you, especially if you've been over-caffeinated or you're shivering from the cold or the dog is nervous. All right, do no harm. Trust the veterinarian. And don't use steroids unless you're absolutely sure there's no corneal injury. All right, I guess that's the end of the preface, if you want to call it that. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll get started on the how-tos. We're brought to you in part by PointerShotguns.com, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School. Take a lesson or shop there first by calling Dave Fiedler at MidValleyClays.com for your next shotgun. TrulockChoke Tubes, been with us forever. TrulockChokes.com. Add a bird to your bag with TrulockChokes. MidwayUSA.com, they've got just about everything for shooting, hunting, and the outdoors. And Purina Pro Plan Sport dog food. Learn more about all their formulations for active dogs like ours at ProPlansport.com. All right, welcome back to this bonus edition of the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden, sharing some of the things I've learned in the field, in the veterinarian's office, and on the tailgate over and over and over again about your dog's eyes, my dog's eyes, and how to keep them healthier. All right, so the first thing I would suggest if you're ready to start working on these things is to do it in a quiet, comfortable, distraction-free environment, especially when you're just training for this stuff. Put the other dogs away. Get away from traffic. Don't let anybody else wander around. Just you and your dog. And ideally, he's off the ground at eye level to you. On a tailgate, a picnic bench, training table, it doesn't matter. Get him up where you don't have to bend over, and he feels a little bit more inclined to hold still. He's off the ground. All right, so let's introduce this process slowly, calmly, and gradually. Remember, we're training for this first. I put a leash on my dog, and I step on the end of the leash. That way he's not going to pull back very far. He's not going to be able to run away. It's also one more outward indication that you're in control. Then, if you haven't already, teach your dog to let you hold his muzzle. You know, just put your hand around it. Don't squeeze too hard. Maybe for a while you're just barely holding it. And then teach him to understand that you're going to be moving his head around, steering it, if you will, with his muzzle. After a while, you want to start putting your fingers slowly and carefully up towards his eyes. Eventually, you'll be able to touch his eyelids. With your thumbs above and below one eye and near the lid edges, and you'll have to practice this to see what I mean, but you want to basically pull back both eyelids. You can do it one at a time. Pull the top one back, look up there, release that one, pull the bottom one down, and then look in there, so that you can get a good look at most of the stuff that may or may not be in there without touching his eyelids, his eyeballs. That's where the real rubber meets the road with a dog eye exam. When you start literally poking him in the eye, he's going to get a little bit more nervous. Now, if you do that, you pull those up and you find something, you want to be careful about what you do to get it out. You scrape it around in the wrong way, it could scratch that cornea. It could lacerate the eyeball or the inner eyelid for that matter. So go slow, think twice. We'll be talking about the ways to get that stuff out of there in a minute, but take it easy. Let me give you a hint, and I've done this enough times to know that if you can maneuver your dog, whether it's on the tailgate or the table or even on the ground if you have to, so that he is not facing into the sun, when you're looking up into his face. He won't be squinting near as much. You can always shade it with your body too, and I'll do that if I have to. But if he has to look directly at the sun while you're looking directly at his eyes, he's more likely to squint, and it's a lot harder for you to get a look under the eyelids. So shade him just a little bit. All right, once he's good with your fingers on his lids, work your thumbs closer to the edges of those lids. You don't need to get right in there, and you don't need to peel them back. You can just pull from the bottom or from the top. All right, so he's good now with you looking in his eyes. And you found something in there. Depending on what it is, you may have more than one way to get it out. I like cotton swabs, Q-tips. Yeah. They're simpler and I think a little bit less traumatic to most dogs, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So you got a cotton swab. And again, you're going to have to practice these things. There are techniques that you'll have to acquire, particularly when you're maneuvering a cotton swab with one hand while trying to hold the eyelid open with both hands. But it's doable. And again, just practice it with your dog in a low-stress environment when he doesn't really need the help yet. By the way, treats are a wonderful way to work this kind of stuff out. Bring a pocket full the first few times you practice. All right, so back to the cotton swab. I'll take that thing and I will tease out some of the cotton fibers so there's just a little kind of a mesh. And that's what I'm going to go into the eye with. No, it's still attached, but it's not that whole ball of cotton on the end of the stick. It's kind of a mesh of fibers that's beyond that. So, again, when you're practicing this stuff, show the dog that cotton swab at a distance so he knows what's coming at him. And then you can move it around his face a little bit, and then you can get it closer to his eye. This may take a couple attempts. When you're practicing, you can do a few mock extractions. Keep it low-key with very little swab eye contact until he becomes more comfortable. Now, Flick, knock wood, couldn't care less. He thinks it comes with the territory, and I'm grateful for that. I guess I did it right this time. Here's one of the times when gravity is your friend. Most of the stuff that collects in a dog's eye will collect under the lower lid. So you don't need to get anywhere near the iris, that's the colored part, or the cornea, which is the black part inside the colored part, or even most of the white part. So here we are. If you find a seed, a stick, some sand, or even an insect under the eyelid, and it could be either eyelid, the top or the bottom. Most of the time, like I said, it'll be the bottom one. Take the end of that swab with that mesh, that net, if you will, of a few fibers. Pull the lid down and simply swab that end part, the light, unobtrusive end part, from the outside corner to the inside corner, where it will probably be a little bit downhill, if you will, and that corner, the inside corner of the eye, will help you push it the rest of the way out, if it doesn't just stick to the fibers on the cotton swab. Quite often, that's all you need. Touch the stuff and it'll stick to the swab. If you need to do it a couple times, no problem. Give them a break and then go back and do it again. Yeah, like I said, you'll have to practice. You're going to be holding the eyelid open. You're going to brace your other hand on his cheek or his forehead so you can touch the fibers just barely to the eye and the stuff that's in there. All right, practice doing the same thing on the upper lid a couple times when there's nothing in there so he understands you're not trying to extract his eyeball, and he should be good. But if there's too much crud in there or it's too fine to catch with a swab, then you might want to wash it out. I carry a little squeeze bottle with distilled water in it. That's what most of the veterinary ophthalmologists will recommend. Not one of those contact lens solutions or saline solution. They're better than nothing in a pinch, but distilled water is the one that my docs have used when I've had eye problems with my dogs. So carry a small squeeze bottle or a syringe. If you have one of those syringes in your first aid kit for washing wounds and that sort of thing, you want to be careful about the pressure you use. But with a squeeze bottle or a syringe, again, practice that beforehand because you're going to need 3 hands to get it all done. You don't want the water coming out with a lot of velocity, but you want to do basically the same thing. Point the dog's head a little bit down so that when you do open his eyelids and pour gently a little water in the uphill end, it'll wash everything to the downhill end, the inside corner of his eye. Practice it the same way. Show him the bottle. Bring it close. Maybe pour a little near his eye, but not in it. You can only imagine how traumatic that dog would consider that, to see water coming right at his eyeball. So give it a little practice. And obviously, you don't want to spray at his cornea or his iris. You want to just get it down at the low part near the lid where all that stuff is collected. Well, that's the 2 choices you have. And if you can't get this stuff out with one or the other, those choices, it's probably time to head for the veterinarian. Once your dog is there, he might be anesthetized a little bit, sedated in one way or another, so that they can poke and prod with other instruments that may be a little bit more effective depending on where that stuff is and what it is. If it's abrasive, if it's got a thorn or an edge to it. And all those grass-ons do. We can't see them, but there's microscopic rasps on some of those awns. So you want to be real careful about dragging those things around on the eye. Get them out fast or see the veterinarian. Of course, when you're done, a food treat, a fun bumper, or of course, going back to the hunt is the best reward. Yeah, your hunting dog is way happier, healthier, and less distracted if his eyes are working correctly. He'll pay more attention to your commands, and I need all the help I can get, and he'll be eager to work. He uses his eyes as much as he uses his nose in the field. He'll always need his vision to find that bird that you shot. Now me, I got another problem when it comes to that, but I'm taking lessons. I'm doing my best. So hopefully I'll live up to my half the bargain. This second half of the bonus edition of the Upland Nation podcast has been brought to you by Purina Pro Plan Sport Dog Food. Learn more about them. Hey, Flick is in great shape. Thanks to Pro Plan Sport. Learn more at ProPlansport.com. MidvalleyClays.com. Start your shotgun search there. Talk to Dave Fiedler about all the things you want out of a shotgun. He may surprise you with some of the questions and some of the suggestions he has. MidvalleyClays.com. TrulockChokes.com. If you're not hitting as many birds as you like, there might be bird-sized holes in your shotgun pattern. Well-engineered, American-made choke tubes might help you there. TrulockChokes.com. MidwayUSA.com. Of course, they're my outfitter for everything in the shooting, hunting, and outdoor world. PointerShotguns.com. If you're looking to upgrade in one way or another, they've got it. Take a look at their new FT12 semi-automatic. under $4.99. And HiViz shooting systems. See what you've been missing. Learn what I'm talking about. Watch the video at HiVizSights.com. I'm Scott Linden. Hope you enjoyed this bonus edition of the Upland Nation podcast. Thanks for listening.